welcome to a new edition of our program Africa Today. And in this edition of our program, we will review some of the reports from the African continent. And we start from Libya, where officials warned that a disease outbreak in Libya's northeast, where floods have killed thousands, could create a second devastating crisis as adults and children fell ill from contaminated water. Details follow.
Statement, the United Nations Support Mission in Libya said it was particularly concerned about water contamination and the lack of sanitation after two dams collapsed during Mediterranean storm Daniel, sending a wall of water gushing through the eastern city of Derna on September 11. The death toll has varied, with government officials and aid agencies giving tallies ranging from about 4,000 to 11,000 dead. The mission said 9 UN agencies responding to the disaster are working to prevent diseases from taking hold and creating another crisis in the devastated country, which is receiving 28 tons of medical aid. On Monday, protesters gathered outside the Al-Shabana Mosque in central Derna in a show of anger against authorities. Officials said at least 3,338 bodies had been identified and buried as of Monday night. Last week, Derna's mayor said the toll could reach 20,000 dead. Meanwhile, the floods have raised concerns about the ruins of Cyrene, an ancient Greco-Roman city roughly 37 miles east of Derna that is one of 5 Libyan UNESCO World Heritage Sites.
And the International Monetary Fund will grant Morocco $1.3 billion loan. The statement was made by Morocco's state media. More in this report.
The 6.8 magnitude earthquake hit Morocco at 11:11 p.m. on September 8, causing mass death in mountain villages near the epicenter that have collapsed in on themselves. A magnitude 4.8 aftershock hit 19 minutes later. Entire villages higher up the mountains were leveled. In many, at least half of the population appears to have died. The day after the quake, hundreds of residents of the mountain town of Moulay Ibrahim gathered to perform funeral rites, praying on rugs arranged neatly in the street before carrying blanket-covered bodies from the town's health center to its cemetery. The United Nations reported that roughly 300,000 people were likely affected by the earthquake. UNICEF said that likely included 100,000 children, as the Moroccan government approved only limited assistance from 4 countries and certain NGOs. Amizmi's residents said that nearby villages desperately needed more assistance. Residents of the town swept all the rubble off the main road so that cars, motorcycles, and aid crews can reach villages further along the mountain roads. A giant pile of steel rods, baskets, and broken cinder blocks lay just off the center of the road. Morocco on Monday created a special government fund for earthquake-related efforts, to which King Mohammed VI later donated the equivalent of $97 million.
And Ukraine said a grain ship is leaving its Black Sea port carrying grains to Africa. It said the vessel Resilient Africa, with 3,000 tons of wheat, has left the port of Konomorsk and is heading towards the Bosphorus. Details follow.
Ukraine said on Tuesday a cargo ship carrying grain had left a southern Black Sea port despite a Russian threat to treat civilian vessels there as potential military targets. Moscow levied the warning after this summer, leaving an agreement brokered by the UN and Turkey to allow maritime exports from Ukraine. But Kyiv created a naval corridor that several cargo ships have used. Infrastructure Minister Alexander Korakov said on social media that the vessel Resilient Africa, with 3,000 tons of wheat, has left the port of Konomorsk and is heading towards the Bosphorus. He specified that the ship had also entered the Ukrainian port several weeks earlier via the newly established corridor, alongside one other vessel that Korakov said would soon depart for Egypt. In July, Russia scuppered the key deal that guaranteed safe passage for grain shipments from 3 Ukrainian ports and stepped up attacks on Ukraine's port infrastructure.
نحن لدينا مصير مشترك.
مصر تسلمت الرئاسة الدورية للاتحاد الإفريقي لعام 2019 وتتطلع كعادتها دوما للتعبير عن شواغل الشعوب الإفريقية الشقيقة الرامية لتحقيق الاستقرار والتقدم ودفع عجلة التنمية قدما. إذا كنتم ترغبون في تغيير وجه القارة الأفريقية فالاتحاد الإفريقي كقيادة تستطيع أن تعمل وتدرس بشكل مركزي لمشروع عملاق لبناء بنية أساسية على مستوى القارة. أنا أتصور أن الأمن والاستقرار استثمار. إذا لم تستقر هذه القارة والأمن فيها بمعدلاته عالية، هذا الأمر سينعكس بالسلب علينا كلنا.
And now we are joined over the phone by Ambassador Ayub Mohammed Ayub, Plenipotentiary Minister Commercial. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to you and to the viewers.
So, Mr. Ayub, how would you describe the food insecurity crisis in the world and in Africa specifically?
When it comes to Africa, it means a lot. It means destabilizing regimes, coup d'etat, and many other revolutions and so on. So food security is of paramount importance to all the countries of Africa. Luckily, we are safe in that respect. But in other African countries, food security is at the risk of the non-supply of food or cereals, I mean cereals or wheat from Ukraine and Russia and other suppliers like Argentina. So food security is number one importance to any government in Africa. And this should be the first priority for their efforts to secure constant and strong flow of transportation of their needs of wheat and maize, of course, to these countries, and that should be the first thing any government should do, and this, luckily, we are doing it in a pretty wonderful way in Egypt.
So, Ambassador Ayub, to what extent the Ukrainian war has affected Africa on various domains?
Really, it affected it adversely in many respects, because the constant supply and secure supply of grains to Africa, when it is disrupted, you cannot easily supplement it from other sources. Because this is one thing. Other thing, you cannot grow grains with a push button. So it needs time. So the disruption of supplies from Ukraine to African countries was detrimental to the livelihood of people in Africa. Certain countries, not all of them, of course. Many countries, like some countries, not many, some countries like Egypt was successful to secure its share in this respect, but other countries are unable to cope with the market needs or market supply or sustainable supply of grains from Ukraine, and thanks to the war between Russia and Ukraine. So it is a big issue that has been handled carefully, and maybe the United Nations can broker a settlement in this respect.
So how do you weigh the importance of reaching a mechanism to allow the flow of grain to Africa?
It is very important for international peace and stability in any country of the world, and specifically in African countries. The United Nations has brokered a deal between Russia and Ukraine to ensure constant and flow and supply of grains from Ukraine to other countries like Africa, and Egypt is included in this respect. But in the military operations between Ukraine and Moscow or Russia has disrupted the flow, and this is of detrimental effect to the African countries, and that is why it is very important for the African countries from today to look not only to substitute supplies, but rather to find the local producers who can cope and supplement the needs of their people instead of depending on supplies from undependable sources like Ukraine and other sources.
So, Ambassador Ayoub, how does the current challenges draw the need for more African cooperation?
This is very important. Cooperation between African countries themselves to grow their needs of wheat, or maize, or sorghum, it is very important. We all know that a country like Sudan, in the Damazin area in Sudan, can grow wheat for half of Africa. I'm speaking about just one country, this is Sudan. But we see what is happening in Sudan. It is disrupting the production process, and let alone the supplies to other countries. So African countries are required to do their best to come together and sit down with the presidents or the heads of states of these countries to find a solution or find a roadmap. How can we satisfy the needs of our people from wheat and sorghum and maize, and other cereals, from our local producers, so that we are not put at the mercy of other suppliers who are, India is one of the suppliers, by the way, who are, once they see a crisis, they raise the cost or raise the price. So Egypt is successful in this respect, and it's cooperating with other countries, but the African countries have to come together. Maybe Egypt can broker such a settlement so that they can grow their own wheat, if we can say wheat, in their own countries. And Egypt itself has been supplying the Roman Empire with wheat from the Western Desert. So the presidents are quite positive and are secure. We can secure constant and stable supplies of wheat and other cereals to African countries once the heads of state sit together and draw a roadmap for local production of wheat and other cereals, and try to find the proper way for transporting it to not to export ports, export channels, but rather to the local communities in different parts of Africa. So transportation, of local transportation, is also very important factor, and luckily in Egypt we have seen a very good network of roads which ensures such a situation. We are secured as far as roads are concerned.
So finally, Ambassador Ayoub, how can African countries secure finances to fight climate change in order to overcome its repercussions?
The finances are very important when it comes to importation of wheat and other cereals like barley, like maize and sorghum and other things. African countries has to secure the support of International Monetary Fund and World Bank and maybe big donors like the European Union and the United States, so that they can help themselves to produce their needs of cereals. It is very important that the European countries help, and the United States help the African countries in this respect, because otherwise we see exodus of people through the Mediterranean to European countries. So European countries has their security at stake, and they need to step in and to help African countries in a positive way. And the pragmatic approach to this respect is helping the local producers to to produce their own needs of wheat.
Yes, finally, I'd like to thank you, Ambassador Ayoub Mahmoud Ayoub, Plenipotentiary Minister Commercial. Thank you for being with us today. And by that, dear viewers, we come to the end of today's edition of Africa Today. Thank you for watching.